introduce yourself and your role at the Women's Resource and Development Agency.
Okay, my name is Deirdre Quinn and I'm the Training Development Manager at WRDA.
Thank you. Tell us a bit about yourself and your journey as a feminist.
My journey as a feminist, that's interesting because I think I could probably say until I joined WRDA, I'm not sure I would have even considered myself as a feminist. I've brought up 3 children on my own for 20 years. I've ran my own business for 10 years. I've worked in the community sector from I graduated in Scotland. I lived in Scotland for 20 years and then moved back to Northern Ireland about 10 years ago. So it probably wasn't until I joined WRDA that I would have started thinking about my views and where I was in terms of feminism. I've always, as it turns out, actually, I think I've always agreed with the principles. I just hadn't called myself a feminist, but I've always worked in the community sector. I've always worked with disadvantaged groups, just not specifically with women.
Tell us about the origin of the Community Facilitators programme.
Okay, so the Community Facilitator programme started in 1995, I believe, so nearly 30 years ago, long before my time. But it was set up to upskill women from marginalised and disadvantaged communities to tackle the inequalities that they were facing. So even way back then, a community development approach, which I think was, it was really ahead of its time. So in essence, it's a capacity building programme that is aimed at upskilling women who, many of whom have had maybe a negative experience of formal education, but have a lifetime of rich experience that they need, that would be good to share. So early research told us, I think, that these are the very women that needed to be involved, that needed to be working within their own communities to help other women. And by training women as community facilitators, it increases the level of education that is available to disadvantaged women. It increases the employability of all of the people that take part, but it's also a capacity building, so it increases the community infrastructure, because all of the women who take part in the programme then make a commitment to to take their skills back into the community and for the benefit of local women. So, it's a win-win, really. The women are trained as community facilitators and then they take those skills back and roll them out for local women. And at the time, 30 years ago, or just close to 30 years ago, there was a little bit of a negative kind of press around training within the women's centres. And for some, there was this idea that the women's centres ran wee courses. Maybe not kind of substantial training, but just kind of little courses, kind of to get women through. The Community Facilitator programme actually was a challenge to that. It's a weighty programme. It's a formal level 3 qualification in learning and development, and it looks at all of the academic theory around teaching, and then a lot of practical facilitation skills. So it was. I think it was probably in response to that kind of negativity. And then once trained, the community facilitators deliver a range of health programmes to women throughout Northern Ireland. So anything from the current programmes that are ran are the breast, cervical and bowel cancer screening awareness programmes. But over the years, there have been a range of health programmes, from parents promoting healthy habits, cardiovascular health. There has been alcohol, counting the costs. There have been programmes on women's health and the menopause, so a whole big range of health programmes. And we train the community facilitators to have a facilitated dialogue approach. And what that means is, rather than going and just delivering a lot of information, they provide information, but they also allow people to express their fears and to ask questions and to have their voices heard, really. And that kind of peer-to-peer education, that's known as peer education, that model, we understand, just gives a much deeper engagement. And then as a result of that, I think the community facilitators are viewed as kind of as role models, or as certainly as credible sources of information. You know, they're seen as having an awareness of local issues because they're from the community and they've been through the same experiences. And then naturally all of our programs are delivered in women-friendly environments, you know, that are local, supportive, accessible, inclusive. And we provide like bespoke sessions also to all groups with additional needs regionally as well. So we tailor the groups for whoever's in front of us.
What has the impact of the Community Facilitator programme been?
Oh goodness, so going for nearly 30 years, I think the CF programme has evolved and has grown immeasurably, like over the last 28 years. You know, we've delivered courses regionally to all kinds of groups, and it has ensured, I think, that the WRDA has a very powerful regional presence as a leading feminist organisation. In terms of the impact, I think it can be measured on a couple of different levels. So, for example, for the women who've completed it, the feedback from many community facilitators has been that it's been life-changing, you know, for in terms of personally. So they complete a level 3 certificate in learning and development. So they're awarded that on successful completion, but which is a widely recognised training qualification. So it's opened doors from that point of view for an awful lot of women who weren't quite sure what work they wanted to go into, but once they completed the course, it has increased their employability. But I think perhaps as importantly, if not more importantly, I think what it has also done is a lot of the women that come on the Community Facilitators programme have quite low confidence to start off with, and because, you know, possibly haven't had a formal education or much of a formal education in the background. And the programme, I think, really empowers women to make choices in their lives. So quite often it acts as a catalyst actually for moving forward. So it's hard to quantify, but we know that feedback from the community facilitators has been fabulous over the years. And in fact, many are currently now working within the community sector, leading up some of the, you know, kind of the organisations now. In terms of the impacts of the programmes, so over the years we've delivered, as I'd said, you know, look, a range of different programmes. So in addition to our current cancer screening awareness programmes, we've ran parents promoting sexual health, mental health and well-being, cardiovascular awareness, alcohol counting the cost, parents promoting healthy habits and women's health. And these have all been delivered regionally and often to marginalised groups, like living in areas of deprivation. So you're talking about directly impacting at need. You know, I mean, it's again, it's that kind of community development approach. And then still on impact, some statistics maybe. So for example, just from the last year, in terms of the breast, cervical and the bowel, WRDA delivered 199 breast, cervical and bowel cancer screening awareness sessions regionally to 2,068 participants. And that's just in 1 year, you know, again regionally. And this included many workshops as well for groups that had additional needs. So actually the numbers there, I believe, were 78 sessions were delivered for 674 groups with additional needs. And the additional needs could have been any type of disability or mental health problem. It could have been, we've delivered an awful lot to groups whose first language wasn't English. We've had translators in. We've worked a lot with the travelling community. In fact, almost, I think it probably covers all of the Section 75 groups. So in terms of impact, that was just in the last year, over 2,000 participants. And then in terms of the numbers, we reckon that, so for example, a thorough review of, we collect evaluations, you know, before and after, and a thorough review of the evaluations we tell you that the overwhelming majority of participants say they will now go on to go to the screening. So they will go to the breast screening when they get an invite, they will go to cervical, and they will return, they will complete the FIT, which is the bowel screening test. And then in addition to that, once they come away from the sessions, they share that information. And we reckon, there's been a bit of analysis done, but we reckon that participants disseminate the information to other folk, whether by word or mouth, or maybe given copies of the handouts, to anywhere between 3 and 40 other people. And those can be, so that can include, you know, mothers, daughters, sisters, dads, friends, neighbours. You know, again, it's the community development in action. So developing capacity from the ground up. And that's just the last year. So if we're going 28 years, you can imagine how many people, the impact that the programme has had.
The Community Facilitator programme was fully redesigned in 2018. What improvements or changes have been made to the programme?
Okay, yes it was, and actually the changes were, it was just as the time where I took a post at WRDA. So the main change was the change in awarding body. That was the initial thing. So the Community Facilitators programme beforehand, the level 3 certificate, was a qualification that was awarded by an organisation. It was called OCR. OCR were based in England, and in 2018 or 2017, I think actually, I'm not quite sure why they pulled the plug. So we need to look for another awarding body. In Northern Ireland, OCN-NI are the main awarding body here, and as an organisation, WRDA hadn't worked with them. So I, opened up a conversation. They linked us up with a business advisor, and have to say then they took us through the steps to having the level 3 qualification OCN accredited. But we used that as an opportunity as well to have a look at just kind of like how the programme was in terms of resources. So we revised some of the resources, and we also streamlined the delivery. So the entire course now runs from start to finish over 3 months. So that includes the practical delivery. I think beforehand it was over about 6 months. Also, WRDA is now an OCN awarding centre, and we've kind of used that as the blueprint for having a lot of other courses OCN accredited. So it's been a little bit like a springboard for WRDA in terms of getting into the qualifications, linking training to qualifications.
What impact has feminism had on adult education?
Okay, well, feminism has been a positive force shaping adult education, or shaping how adult education is delivered. I think certainly within the women's sector. For example, all the training that WRDA engage with is with a gendered lens, and is informed by WRDA's work on the barriers that women face accessing education. And that includes approaches designed to address these. So for example, in light of a lot of women citing no confidence as a barrier, a lot of the training that we would do would work on sharing life experiences rather than any kind of necessity to have formal background in training or qualifications to get onto the training. And participants are encouraged to reflect upon their own knowledge and experience. Additionally, I think feminism has meant that when you're thinking about training, your model is one of flexible delivery. So, and that can be applied to the duration, for how long it runs, the timing, the location, and the training methods. So you're always thinking of what barriers women specifically bring to the training. So we could include things like options for mornings or afternoons, or starting after kids have been dropped to school, finishing courses earlier, and could even be evening or weekends. And this can always take account into childcare, or of childcare needs rather, which is one of the biggest barriers for women. But I think also what impact has feminism had? I think recently, certainly in the last, because I feel like there is a real momentum in terms of feminism now, you know, and I think there's finally an acceptance that women need to be treated equally, and I'm not sure that was around before 10 years ago. And I think because of that now, a lot more women are signing up for courses or are challenging themselves and are kind of where maybe they would have thought beforehand, well, maybe not me. Now actually they're putting themselves forward and saying, well, actually this is something that it's one of my rights. So I think, hard to quantify, but I think it's all very good. I think the movement will help to address the inequalities definitely, and kind of help level the playing field.
What is the adult education landscape like at the moment?
Okay, I think I would have to say that the adult learning landscape at the minute is pretty fragmented in Northern Ireland, and very poorly funded. And I think probably from 2008, in fact, it has had its funding cut almost year upon year. Northern Ireland is almost unlike any other part of the UK as well, in that there is no statutory body responsible for adult learning. So for example, in Ireland, you have an organisation called AINTOS, which is the National Adult Learning Organisation, advocating for the right of all adults in Ireland to quality lifelong learning. In England, there is an organisation called the Learning and Work Institute that has a similar role. Again, statutory funded, but there's no such thing in Northern Ireland. So actually in Northern Ireland, what you have are lots of different community organisations, community and voluntary organisations, putting on a lot of quality, fabulous adult learning, but all fighting for funding. And I think to make matters worse, over the last, since Brexit, we kind of knew, what was Brexit, 2016, I think since the referendum, we knew we're going to lose ESF, so the European Social Fund money. And ESF funded a lot of the community and voluntary sector. Almost anything to do with employability would have been funded through ESF. And just this year, I think we've lost the last of it. So it has really hit the community and voluntary sector hard. The people who are delivering a lot of this training on the ground. So it's a little bit bleak. WRDA are members of an organisation called FALNI, which stands for the Forum for Adult Learning Northern Ireland. And so FALNI are working to become a registered charity. Actually, the process has already started to become a charity, and ultimately the aim is to get statutory recognition, to become the AINTOS of Northern Ireland, or the Learning and Work example here. FALNI is led by Colin and Trevor Nealons, and along with other community sector organisations like NICFA, ourselves, OCN, CITB, Belfast Met, and loads of organisations. So we're lobbying for permanent funding for the adult learning sector, but as we speak, I would have to say it's a challenging road ahead.
Thank you, Deirdre.